Hey friends, welcome in to the final episode of the Web Design Business Podcast of 2024. Yes, don't worry, plenty more ahead. In fact, we've got some doozies lined up for Q1 here in 2025, but I wanted to end off 2024 with some tips for planning and goal setting. Now, if you're like me, you tend to get into this mode the last couple weeks of December or the first couple weeks of the new year. Some people plan a lot sooner than that. I like to kind of start the new year in planning mode and vision mode. So what I'm going to do with you in this episode here is I'm actually going to share with you an entire lesson from my business course. If you didn't know, I have a web design business course. It's my flagship course. It's a big one. It covers everything from start to finish client experience, from onboarding to project management, proposals, invoicing, contracts. And we start with you, as in goal setting and planning and building up your business. So this lesson covers my 5-step framework for planning and goal setting based off of your goals, which could be revenue, but it could also be time. It could be what you want your schedule to look like this year in 2025 and beyond. So I'm really excited to see how this helps you. I would love to hear from you on how this helps you plan and set goals for this year to help you have a successful 2025 and whatever that looks like for you. The show notes for this episode are going to be over at joshhall.co/359. And if you like this lesson, you're going to love the entire business course, which is now inside of my community, Web Designer Pro. So if you have not heard of this, we have just recently introduced tiers to Web Designer Pro. So if you just want the business course and my entire suite of courses, you can now get that in the courses tier of Web Designer Pro, which is currently, at the time of this video, subject to change, it's only $49 a month. You can join the community tier, which has all the courses and all of the community aspects, and you'll find me in the forums and can tag me and interact with me in the community. Or if you would like coaching directly with me and get the full pro experience, we have the coaching tier at $199 right now. Now, one thing you get is if you join the community tier or above, we also have our pro training library. And we did a presentation, a guest expert training that really ties into this episode before we dive in. Chris Badgett, who is the CEO of Lifter LMS, awesome colleague of mine who I really have learned to view as almost a business coach. He did a training on an annual planning system. And I have to admit, I ripped off a lot of what he taught in this for this lesson and for this episode. So just another aspect of pro when you dive in that's going to be a great value add for you is Chris Badgett's annual planning system. Be a great additional step off of this lesson here that we're going to dive into for goal setting and planning for your web design business to make 2025 freaking awesome. Happy New Year, friends. I hope you had a great Christmas. Happy holidays, everybody. And I'm real excited to, I don't know about you, but I'm excited to start, to turn the calendar year and start 2025. So let's start it off strong, shall we? Here we go. My simple goal setting framework is this. It's really a 5-step framework that starts with having a revenue goal. And again, depending if you're just starting out or if you're refining your business and reevaluating your plans and goals, either way, it's a good idea to have some sort of revenue goal. Now, what's interesting, and I'm sure when you think about goals just like me, you think, oh, all right, I got to have a money goal. But the reality is, even if you're not in it for the money necessarily, you adjust your time and your freedom and your lifestyle about what your business is bringing in. Unless you're fortunate to have other income streams, or even if your business is a side hustle, or you're a very lucky person who's on a trust fund situation, like you're going to have to align your life around your revenue goals and what you're taking in. So that's why it's so important to have some sort of goal that, again, is reasonable and attainable, but also gets you outside your comfort zone. So for those of you who are thinking, I'd like to hit 25,000, I would encourage you, let's bump that up to 35 or 40,000, or more than likely 50. And if you're thinking 75,000, then I'm thinking, well, we might as well go for 6 figures. If you can make 75, you can 100% make 6 figures with just a few tweaks. And same thing, if you're thinking 100,000, then let's go 150. So with that in mind, revenue goals. Let's say, to make this simple, because I'm not a math guy, I'm even nervous about getting into some math here with you, but I've got slides, thank goodness. I'm not thinking on the fly. We're going to pretend like we have an annual goal of $100,000. So 6 figures, 100K. Now, the cool thing about an annual goal like this is it's very easy to break it down with the months and quarters. So If we divide an annual goal by a quarterly goal, that's going to take us to 25,000. So our goal is to hit 25,000 every 3 months in a quarter. And if we break that down to a monthly goal, then that's going to take us to 8,333. Now, the really important and cool thing about this is that suddenly 6 figures looks a little bit more attainable here, doesn't it? Like, okay, if you're thinking $100,000, you might be thinking, whew, gosh, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of projects. But if we're looking at what could we practically get to at around $8,000, suddenly that makes a little more sense, because if I did, and we'll get into pricing here, but if goal pricing, if I had a project that's on average $4,000 and it's only going to take me a couple of those a month to potentially hit that goal, and then if I have additional services, we could totally hit this. And if we get on average $8,000, then we are on track to hit 6 figures, my friends. So, and this is why it's really important to break down goals, I've found, into quarterly and monthly chunks, because it's just like weight loss. If you want to lose 100 pounds, you don't go outside and start walking or running to lose 100 pounds. You start small, one step at a time, pun intended. So that's why it's really important to have a goal. Like, you want to have your annual goal, but you could even hide this if you need to. Like, set an annual goal, put it on a file on your computer or in a spreadsheet or whatever it is, or have it in the back of your mind, and then break it down into more attainable goals. I actually really like focusing more on quarterly goals personally, and then having, and I'll explain like how to measure goals in this lesson here. But you really want to have your focus on monthly and quarterly rather than annual. You want to have the light at the end of the tunnel, but you really want to focus on quarterly and monthly. That's my personal preference when it comes to tracking goals, at least. So for example, let's say when it comes to hitting 8,000 a month on average, let's say we have a primary service that's $5,000. For this case, it's probably going to be website services. You're going to have web design. No matter what your business model is, we'll look at that. Ideally, you're going to have one main service. In this case, of the goal of $1,000, or excuse me, $100,000. Yeah, $1,000 a year, we can definitely hit that real easy. Our primary service is likely going to be around the $5,000 range. So if you have a primary service of websites that are 2,500, 2 of those will bring us to $5,000. Now, ideally, you'll probably have some sort of secondary service, and we'll get into some actual concepts of these here next. And this is just my personal framework to hit this goal. I would recommend having a secondary service that's maybe about half of what your primary service is going to be. So in this case, let's pretend that our goal is to hit $5,000 a month with the main service, $2,000 with a secondary service, and then you're guessing it, there's a little more space under here, which probably means that the third one's coming, which is a third service, or in a lot of cases, what I found that worked for my business is to have a recurring service like hosting and maintenance, which would ideally get to around the $1,500 a month range. And as your business grows, as you double this and triple this, that's when you can really get to 6 figures and multi-6 figures sustainably when you have a recurring service that gets further up. Now, with all these services, what we're going to get into in the business course here as we move forward is what I recommend, which are 3 categories, which are build, grow, and support. Now, we're going to dive into this in the next module when we get into your services and pricing, but just a heads up, this is kind of a teaser into what we're going to get into, because build, grow, support is what I have in mind when it comes to these slides right here. So the first one, web design services, we're aiming for $5,000 a month. This is going to be in your build category. These are going to be website designs from the ground up and website redesigns. Then we're going to get into your second category, which I like to consider like a growth type category. So this might be SEO, it might be marketing, it might be copywriting, it might be video, it might be whatever you're doing alongside your website builds. And ideally in this case, we're going to try to hit 2,000, which means our last service, which are recurring services, are going to be some sort of support. Care plans, hosting, all that included. Ideally, we would get to about $1,500 a month. And with the goal of $100,000 total, this current setup as our goal would bring us to $8,500 per month. Now, how cool is that? We took the idea of $100,000, 6 figures, which looks a little daunting, right? But we broke it down into these 3 categories of services, and this looks much more attainable. If you could do one website for $5,000, if you could do 2 sort of like growth plans for clients at $1,000 each per month, and if you got your care plans and hosting, let's say you have 15 clients paying you $100 a month, then you could I don't want to say easily, but you can very practically get to right here, $8,500 per month. And that's going to bring you to six figures. That's exactly what we're wanting to get when it came to our goal. So we just looked at where that leads us, 8,500. What was our goal? Just over 8,000 to hit our quarterly goal of 25 and our annual goal of 100,000. So that's a few tips for setting annual revenue goals. Of course, your numbers can fluctuate depending on what your goal is. Now, the second tip I have for you is to make sure really quickly that we separate net versus gross. So we talked about 100,000, but I think if you're brand new to business, heads up, you're not going to take home $100,000 when you make $100,000 as a business owner. This is a big mindset shift I see for people coming from the corporate world into freelance and web design. And I realized this too early on is I had to remember, well, if I charge $3,000 for a website, I'm not making $3,000. And I know your family and friends are going to be like, dang, you're making $3,000 on websites. No, I'm pulling in $3,000 for the business, but I'm not taking home $3,000. There's a difference between net versus gross. And if you don't know, or if you need a quick reminder, net is what you take home in your business. Gross, I intentionally added this icon because, ew, that's what gets taxed and that's what expenses come out of. So again, net, what you keep, what you take home. Gross, ew, it's called that for a reason. It's because you're going to get taxed on it and all your expenses come out of that. Now, there's one other area of this that I want to hit on before we move on to the next point, and that is profit. Now, profit's interesting because profit is the money that's left over after taxes, after expenses, or if you read Profit First by Mike Michalowicz, when I had him on my podcast, we talked about this. You can also move profit as the first thing you worry about, and then taxes and expenses, as long as you pay your taxes. Like you can't tell the IRS to not tax me yet, I don't have enough profit. No, that's not the way it works, but you can use profit for two different purposes that I've found. And the reason I want to share this with you is because it may just depend on where you are in life and in business with what you do with the profit. So I tend to take a lot more profit currently for me and my family. That's because I'm a little more established and I know whether I have good months or bad months, I know I'm going to make plenty that beat our expenses and I'm going to have that left over. But there are seasons where I invest more profit into the business. So profit can either go more over towards net, towards your personal income, or it can go more over to the gross expenses, like building your business. It can go into ads. It could go into hiring. It could go into systems, tools, anything for business growth. And of course, you can take a little of both. So ideally, you would have some sort of like what you need to take home. And then apart from that, like let's say you need to take $50,000 home in a year. You make $100,000. Let's say 30% of that goes to taxes, 10% goes to expenses. You got another 10% that you can either use to grow your business further, or you can take it home and go on a really nice vacation that year. That's an example of net versus gross, what you take home, what gets taxed and expensed on, and that profit, baby, whatever you want to do with it. And ideally, you want to make more and more profit. Now, I'm keeping it very simple with the numbers, but that's essentially the framework that I've used that's really helped me out with net versus gross income. Now, there's something when it comes to planning and goal setting that I want to touch on. Again, we're just scratching the surface on this, but it's the idea of rocks, stones, and boulders. Because when it comes to goals, I'm sure you're like me and thinking or noticing that there's all these gurus talking about goal plannings. And there's something really popular called SMART goals, which you may have seen in any sort of business program, which are like specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, timely type goals. And that's all great. But what I've found is that when it comes to goal setting and hitting the numbers that we just went over as kind of a mock exercise, there are different types of projects for building our business that are going to be really big projects, i.e. boulders, kind of mid-range projects, i.e. stones, or just little things that we could kind of put in there depending on what season of life we're in and how many projects we have. So let's take this into a deeper level, shall we? Let's look at rocks, stones, and boulders. Now, again, like I just said, rocks are going to be small weekly goals. For example, maybe making an SOP. Like maybe you go through my web design process course and you're ready to implement this, baby. You want to put this into Basecamp or whatever you're using for project management, which yes, we're going to get to shortly. If you want to create an SOP for yourself, for your team, I would consider that a rock. It's a small goal. It's something that helps your business, and it's likely something you'll be able to do within a week, maybe even less than a day or just a few hours. But when it comes to aligning your big goals, you could totally put this inside of some sort of goal sheet for your business in order to hit those numbers. So that would be a rock type of goal. Now, something bigger may be a stone in this case, which would be more of a mid-range, a goal that you would likely try to get done within a month. And that would be, in this case, maybe like a new website page, and not like a portfolio page or a blog post, but, well, it could be a blog post, but I'm talking maybe you do like a big revamped success stories page, for example, which is something I highly recommend for you in your business. So in this case, you don't want to rush it. And within a week, maybe, if you're managing a bunch of other projects, I would make this a stone. I would make this a monthly type goal. And it's going to take some time, but it'll really behoove you in the long run and benefit your business. So I would put this goal as kind of a stone. Also, I mean, other monthly goals could be like hiring a subcontractor, or it could be any number of things that aren't going to take several months, but they are going to be a decent amount of time that you don't want to rush. And then finally, those big goals, that's a Boulder, baby. These are the big needle moving type of projects or goals in your business. These are going to be usually what I do personally. I do these quarterly. I generally try to have like 4 quarterly boulders, and then stones and rocks fill in with the rest of the projects that I personally want to get in here. And I'm going to show you my goals for this year at the time of recording the revamped version of this course in 2023 here. But for example, for you as web designers, maybe it's launching a new service. Maybe you have a lot of web design services going, and you're doing some additional retainer work, but you have not yet built your hosting and maintenance plan. This would be a boulder. You go through my maintenance plan course, you get everything ready to go. You could do it in less than a month for sure. You technically do it less than a week, but when it comes to marketing it, selling it, and getting things going, I would consider this a boulder. This would be like how great would it be to finish a quarter of your year and think, I got my maintenance and hosting plan going. Yes, that was a boulder style goal. So I'm going to show you my actual quarterly planning goal list for this year. Would you like to see it? All right, here we go. Check this out. So it's not super technical, not super wild. It is literally a Google Doc for me. This is what I do. Now, I like to label each one of these main goals that I'm going to do within a quarter as a boulder, stone, or rock, like I just shared with you. So I'm recording this in Q2. So in Q1, I did rebrand what was formerly my web design club into what is now my web design membership, Web Designer Pro. Set up some sequences and automations. Again, this was something I was able to do mostly within a week. Launched Pro, which was a biggie. Solidify SEO for web design business pages and content. I didn't do that because I don't know what the heck I was talking about. I don't remember. There's a good example of making sure your goal is, make sure whatever goal you're doing makes sense, because I don't remember what the heck I was talking about. So I could just, you know what, I'm just going to check and say I did it because it's working. So my Boulder was launching Pro. Big project was, my Boulder was just reconfiguring and redoing it, revamping it. The stone for me was launching it, and then the little things involved with that were kind of a rock, the week kind of stuff. I'm in Q2 right now. Look what I'm doing. My Boulder for Q2 is revamping this course, the next version of the course. Then I've got a few stones that I'm going to do. And the cool thing about this, you'll see like over here, I don't even know for sure what I'm going to do in Q4. You could really map this out. But essentially what I'm doing is I'm just getting an idea for like, what's the big boulder for each one of these quarters. Now you may have a couple boulders depending on the size of the project, but I would not recommend doing too many huge projects every quarter, especially for you as you're managing your web design projects. And then when it comes to goals, I like to have a little saying like at the end of this year, I want to be able to say I started these things or I completed these things. So this is just a look at what I'm personally doing for this year. So again, very simple. Mine is a Google Doc. That's it. Nothing wild. You could go as wild as you wanted to make it. Now let's wrap this lesson up with a few things when it comes to your planning and goal setting. So we talked about revenue goal. Now we have a really good mindset of what we're keeping versus what's in the business and what's going to be taxed. We talked about the goals that we're going to have and what size they are. A big thing when it comes to your revenue is your pricing. Now, we're not going to get far into pricing here because we have a whole a whole lesson on pricing. But one thing I do want to just make sure to tease you with here is that you want to make sure your pricing aligns with your goals. So if you have a goal of $100,000, but you're charging $1,000 for websites, guess what that means? That means you're going to have to do 100 sites a year and 8 sites a month. And unless you have a very templatized structure in place where you can crank out 2 websites per week, I don't know anybody who is able to do that. That's what you would need to do. And I know I'm using these numbers because I got to a point in my business and my journey where I wanted to hit 6 figures, but I was charging about $1,000 on average. So it dawned on me that, like, if you put this out on a spreadsheet, you can if you want to. Literally, I need to do 100 sites a year and 8 sites a month. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't do that. Now, if you double your price points, that gets you a little closer. Ideally, you would triple or quadruple this, which is what I'm going to teach you here later on in the course. That will lead you to 6 figures as an example. So I just wanted to make sure that your pricing, aligns with your goals. Just remember, no goals equals very unclear pricing. So for those of you who are just not sure what to charge, look at your goals. What's your revenue goal? What do you want to take home in a month? That's going to help determine your pricing. And then finally, just a real quick note before we head on to the next lesson. When it comes to measuring your goals, I showed you how I recommend doing annual and then quarterly and monthly. When it comes to measuring this is a big hang up I see with a lot of people. And that is, you do not want to, well, let me share this first. My recommendation is that you measure quarterly, meaning right here. You don't want to live and die with every week of your business. And I'm putting this in here because just recently, at the time of recording this lesson, my mother-in-law was working for a home inspector who used to be one of my clients. And she recently got let go because he is now going into realty. He got out of the home inspection business. But one thing I noticed with him is he would spend like crazy when they made a lot of money. And then he would like lay people off whenever they had a bad week. And it was week to week. And this is no way to be a sustainable business owner. So when it comes to your web design business, do not live and die with every week. It's why I recommend measuring quarterly. Now, monthly is good too. You want to see what you're taking in month to month, but you're going to have good weeks and bad weeks. You're going to have good months and bad months. I don't want that to put you on cloud 9 for too long. And I also don't want that to destroy you if you have a bad month. I'm learning this, and I've continued to learn this as an entrepreneur for many years now. I'm expecting really good months and really bad months, but I look at quarterly. What did I make this quarter? Because it's a lot more achievable and attainable. I want you to get out of the week-to-week and month-to-month trap. It's basically like a hamster wheel because you literally just live and die, again, with this week-to-week or month-to-month mentality. So a quick recap. Josh's simple goal-setting framework. Set a revenue goal. Make sure you separate net versus gross. Set those goals as rocks, stones, and boulders. Make sure your pricing aligns with the goals when it comes to your revenue goal. And then make sure that you measure it in a way that's suitable for you, knowing you're going to have good and bad months. So that's the biggie right there, how and when to measure. Well, I hope you enjoyed that one, friends. Again, this is a lesson from my web design business course, which is available in Web Designer Pro. Link below. You can just go to webdesignerpro.com. You can just join the course tier if you want to get access to my business course and my entire suite of courses. Or we have the other tiers for you if you want a more engaged and immersive experience. Again, the training I mentioned with Chris Badgett on the annual planning system is what this lesson that I just shared with you is kind of based off of. So I took a lot from his training that I've applied in my business, and it's been super helpful. And I hope this has been helpful for you. I would love to hear from you. If it has, you can drop me a note at joshhull.co/359, which is where this episode show notes will be at. I hope you had an awesome 2024. If it wasn't so great, then I hope this helps make 2025 awesome. So can't wait to hear from you. Happy New Year. And I got to pull the old dad pun, the dad joke. See you next year.